The night she laughed at me was the night something in me stopped pretending. It wasn't a big fight or some dramatic scene, just one of those Saturday dinners with her circle of friends. We'd taken the train into the city, she wore that navy dress I liked, and I thought maybe things were softening again between us. We hadn't been connecting much lately, but I figured this dinner could be neutral ground, maybe even a way back to normal. Midway through the evening, between 2 rounds of shared tapas and too much wine, someone joked about relationships being hard work. I offered something small, honest, maybe too honest, about how I missed how close we used to be. I said, "We haven't been spending much time together. I think we're losing something important." She didn't even look at me. She just tilted her head toward her friend Lena and gave this airy little laugh. "He's just too needy," she said with a smirk that didn't ask permission. The table erupted. Not malicious laughter, just the light, complicit kind people use when they're relieved the joke's not on them. I didn't laugh. I remember exactly what I felt in that moment. Not rage, not even embarrassment. Just displacement. Like I'd been edited out of my own marriage and recast as a punchline. She glanced at me then, quick, almost dismissive, and touched my arm with a mock consoling pat. "Oh come on, it's a joke. Lighten up." I smiled. Not because it was funny, but because I didn't want to give her friends the satisfaction of seeing me cut. The rest of the night went on in that blurry, detached way events do when you're quietly bleeding and nobody else notices. She danced a little with Lena. She checked her phone often. She laughed loud enough that I realized it had been weeks since she'd laughed like that with me. On the way home, she dozed off in the passenger seat of the Uber, her head tilted away from me. I stared out the window, counting the number of streetlights between her shallow breaths. I wasn't planning anything yet, not consciously. But something irreversible had shifted. I was already stepping back, not out of pride, but out of preservation. I watched her sleep the way someone watches a stranger's coat draped over their chair, familiar in form, but no longer theirs. That comment, too needy, it didn't just hurt. It named something she'd already decided about me. And she'd said it not in private, not in conflict, but in performance, in public, with a laugh. That's when I knew. She wasn't trying to hurt me. She just didn't care if she did. And that's a different kind of wound altogether. I waited until the next night to bring it up. I wanted to see if she would. She didn't. Sunday passed like it always did. Coffee, laundry, half scrolling through streaming options we never finished. She asked what I wanted for dinner, kissed my cheek absently while walking past me in the kitchen, and said nothing about what she'd said the night before. So I asked. We were folding laundry in the living room, that quiet, mundane rhythm we used to enjoy. I said, "That thing you said last night. About me being too needy. You meant that?" She didn't look up from the towel she was folding. "God, are we really doing this? I just want to know if you meant it," I said, keeping my voice level. "Or if it was just a joke that came out wrong." She stood up, hands on hips, brows slightly arched, annoyed, not apologetic. "You expect too much sometimes," she said, like she was stating whether. "You want constant closeness. I don't see love that way." I watched her carefully. "What way do you see it?" She crossed the room, dropping the towel on the back of the chair, and shrugged. "No one belongs to anyone, okay? Love isn't about owning or needing. It's about freedom, growth. You want loyalty like it's a prison sentence." There was no heat in her voice. That was the worst part. It wasn't a fight. It was a diagnosis. She was calm, detached, as if she'd rehearsed this conversation already, just waiting for the right line to set it in motion. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice or plead my side. I just nodded slowly and said, "Thanks for the honesty." She looked slightly thrown by that. Maybe she expected me to push back harder. Maybe she'd already prepared rebuttals I never delivered. But I wasn't going to hand her an argument she could twist into justification. Later that night, I sat alone in the guest room, not out of drama but out of distance, the kind she said she valued. Her version of love was unburdened, non-committal, frictionless. Like convenience wrapped in philosophical wrapping paper. I thought about the times I'd come home early just to spend a few extra minutes with her. The late-night check-ins, the shared plans, the 1,000 small, loyal gestures I'd assumed were mutual. Turns out, I'd been trading vows for preferences. That night, I began shifting something inside me, a quiet calibration. I wasn't going to beg to be held in someone's gaze who was already looking past me. And I wasn't going to ask again what she meant. She'd already told me. I started noticing the changes the way you notice a draft in a room, not all at once, just a quiet shift in temperature you can't ignore. It began with her phone, of course. Not the obvious stuff, no hushed conversations or hidden screens. She was smarter than that. It was the way she started keeping it face down, even when we were alone. The way it vibrated more often after midnight. Once, while brushing her teeth, I caught a glimpse of a name I didn't recognize. Sean. Just that. No last name. No context. The message preview vanished before I could process it. I didn't ask. I told myself it could have been anything. An old colleague. A family friend. A book club contact, if she still went to that. But then came the new outfits. She used to roll her eyes at trendy boutiques. Now packages arrived from places with minimalist logos and tissue paper that looked expensive. She said she was rebuilding her confidence, that she deserved to feel good in her own skin. I didn't disagree, she did deserve that. But she never asked what I thought. Never modeled anything for me. Just slipped into things and left with a breezy, "Don't wait up," tossed over her shoulder. The excuses were always palatable. Self-care. Solo time. "It's healthy to have space," she said, like she was quoting from a wellness podcast she'd memorized. Then came the old friend, from out of town. She said he was visiting for work, that they'd known each other in college. She told me in passing, while organizing her makeup tray, like it was barely worth mentioning. "He's going through a rough patch," she added, not meeting my eyes. "Just wants to catch up." I asked nothing. I didn't even nod. Just watched her reflection in the bathroom mirror, as she touched up lipstick she never wore for me anymore. That week, she was gone 2 nights in a row. Said they lost track of time, that they were just talking. I didn't press. I played the role of the open-minded partner, supportive, unthreatened. But I wasn't blind. She stopped asking about my day. Our texts went from familiar to transactional. "Pick up almond milk, can you send me the login?" Like roommates politely managing a shared calendar. One evening, she came home smelling faintly of cologne that wasn't mine. Subtle, not enough to accuse, just enough to make the air between us taste different. Still, I said nothing. Because that's how these things happen, isn't it? Not in explosions, but in erosion. I wasn't sure yet. I wasn't ready to be sure. But I'd felt the draft, and I knew the windows weren't closed. The message came at 1:17 a.m. on a Thursday. She was asleep beside me, her breathing deep and even, one arm flung across the edge of the bed like she'd forgotten I was there. Her phone buzzed once, then again. She didn't stir. I lay still, staring at the ceiling, heart thudding with a rhythm I couldn't ignore. I told myself not to look, that I'd only find something if I was already convinced it was there. But the truth was, I wasn't looking to find. I was looking to stop wondering. Her screen was dim but not locked. Maybe she'd forgotten. Maybe she didn't care. Maybe she thought I was too needy to ever do something as invasive as look. The thread was open. A contact labeled S, just that. Not Sean anymore. Just an initial. As if even the name had been stripped for efficiency. I read one message. Then another. And another. They weren't emotional. Not tender. Just cold coordination. Location. Time. Past tense confirmation. "That was amazing last night. Same spot next week? Bring that black dress again." That dress. She'd said it was for a gallery event with her yoga friends. There was nothing romantic about the messages. They were mechanical, practical, stripped of affection. But somehow, that made it worse. It meant this wasn't a moment of confusion, or some spiraling emotional affair. This was scheduled, repeated, intentional. I put the phone back exactly how I'd found it, slid from the bed quietly, sat on the floor of the hallway with my back against the wall, and stared at nothing for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just ran through every moment I could remember where she looked me in the eye and lied without blinking. And still, I told myself, maybe this isn't what it looks like. Maybe there's context I don't have. That was the last night I told myself that. When I crawled back into bed an hour later, she shifted and murmured something half asleep, pressing her back slightly toward me. Like a reflex, like a habit. I didn't respond. I stared at the ceiling and memorized how the darkness felt. Not because I was planning revenge, but because I needed to remember the exact moment the illusion cracked. This wasn't about neediness. It wasn't about independence. It was about respect. And I'd finally seen the ledger, what I gave, and what she withheld. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed more than messages. I needed proof she couldn't twist. I started with the bank statements. It's amazing how much truth hides in plain sight when you stop assuming the best. Our shared account, the one we both agreed was just for joint expenses, told a different kind of story. Not loud, not obvious, but undeniable once you knew what to look for. 2 weekends before, she told me she was heading to a wellness retreat, a solo getaway to reset. I didn't question it then. I even offered to drive her, but she waved it off. Part of the process is solitude, she'd said with a soft smile. I remembered that smile now as I clicked through the transactions. The hotel wasn't even out of town, just a luxury spot in the arts district, barely an hour away. 2 nights. Expensive dinners logged within walking distance. Charges at a high-end lingerie boutique I didn't recognize. It was all in the open. She hadn't tried to hide the receipts. She just assumed I wouldn't look. That assumption hurt more than the details. I printed the statements and laid them out on my desk in the home office, each one like a breadcrumb in a trail she didn't know she was leaving. I thought about confronting her then. Just walking into the living room, holding up the page, and asking one simple question. Was your self-care retreat worth it? But that wouldn't help me. She'd deflect, frame it as insecurity. Say I was reading too much into things. Maybe even say she paid for those dinners alone, that the boutique purchase was just retail therapy. She'd scramble, twist, backpedal, and I'd end up looking like the paranoid husband she already painted me as. So I didn't go to her. I went to my laptop. If this was a pattern, and it was, then there would be more. Phones lie. People lie. But money tells a straighter story. I started going backward. 2 months, 3 months, 5. Similar patterns emerged. Charges to the same hotel under slightly different merchant names. Midweek dinners she'd work late through. Ride-share trips that started in neighborhoods we never visited together. She thought she was careful. In a way, she was. But not careful enough to imagine I might stop trusting her. By the time I finished logging everything, I had a 5-page timeline of her movements, her fabrications, her real priorities. Still, I didn't confront her. I wasn't done yet. There's a difference between knowing and proving. I wanted undeniable. Not just to her, to myself. I wasn't going to be the man who said, I think something's wrong. I was going to be the man who walked in with facts so solid she couldn't breathe her way around them. Because if she had no shame doing it, she'd certainly have none denying it, and I needed to be ready for that. I cloned her phone the next day. Not out of spite, out of necessity. If I was going to hold the truth in my hands, I needed it unfiltered, unedited, not served to me through her curated version of honesty. She never let the device out of her sight lately, but one morning, she left it charging in the kitchen while she showered. I'd been waiting for that exact moment. It took less than 3 minutes. An old work friend had once shown me how to mirror a device using cloud sync tools and backup protocols. I remembered more than I let on. By the time the water stopped running upstairs, I had everything forwarding, texts, images, even GPS logs. I deleted all traces of the activity and set the phone exactly where she'd left it, the charging cable bent at the same lazy angle. From then on, I didn't have to guess. I watched the reality unfold in real time. He wasn't just an old friend. He was a fixture. Coordinated meetups, private references to locations, and photos, always taken at angles that excluded his face but included her smile, her posture, her reflection in hotel windows. There was one picture that froze me. She stood in front of a mirror, wearing something I'd never seen. Something clearly purchased for him, not me. It matched the boutique charge from 2 weeks earlier, the one logged during her wellness retreat. She'd taken the photo herself. Send it with a message. You said you liked the lace? I hadn't said anything about lace. The GPS logs confirmed what the messages hinted at. Repeated trips to the same high-rise apartment, always during hours she claimed were dedicated to work events or therapy sessions. The pattern was tight, methodical, just like her. I started documenting it all, screenshots, timestamps, digital copies of receipts. I organized them into folders on a drive I encrypted and labeled with a generic name. Nothing flashy, just quiet, irrefutable structure. That's when the numbness settled in. Not devastation, not fury, just a slow, chilled certainty that I'd crossed into the final phase of knowing. There was no context left to hope for, no alternative version that redeemed her. And still, we had dinner together, still exchanged grocery lists, and shared weekend calendars. She kissed my cheek on her way out the door one evening and said, "You're being really supportive lately. I appreciate that." Supportive. I smiled and nodded, watching her walk away in heels I'd bought for her last birthday, heels she never wore for me. She thought I was calm because I was healed. But the truth was, I was quiet because I was ready. And she had no idea the countdown had already begun. She came home glowing. It was a Sunday evening, not late, not early, and she walked through the door like someone returning from a weekend retreat where nothing had been required of her. Hair still slightly curled, skin lightly perfumed with something new and floral. Not the scent she used to wear for me. Her eyes scanned the room like she'd expected something to be wrong, then relaxed when she found everything exactly as she'd left it. She set down her bag, pulled off her coat, and dropped her keys into the bowl by the door with a sigh. "You wouldn't believe the clarity I got this weekend," she said, smiling as she kicked off her shoes. I watched her from the couch, remote in hand, television on but silent. She walked past me without touching, paused in the hallway, and turned. "We should try more independence," she said, as if it were a suggestion about the weather. "Just space, you know? I think it could be good for us." I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't have words, but because I was watching her face, the ease with which she delivered that sentence. She meant it. She truly believed this was growth. That what she was doing, what she was planning, was sophisticated, evolved. I nodded slowly. "Okay," I said. "Nothing more." She smiled, as if I'd passed a test. That night, I didn't sleep beside her. I took the couch, not out of spite, not in protest. In strategy. I needed to start detaching, quietly, methodically. The house was still mine, but the marriage wasn't, and the couch gave me a vantage point she couldn't read. She didn't ask why. Didn't say a word about it the next morning. Because to her, I was adapting, cooperating, making room for the version of love she'd constructed, one where she could do as she pleased and call it freedom. But she didn't understand what I was really doing. Every hour I spent away from that bed was a small withdrawal from the account of belief. Every silent night was a brick laid in the foundation of my exit, and she mistook it for submission, which made it even easier. I remember watching her brush her teeth that night, humming to herself, looking lighter than she had in months. She thought she'd gotten away with it. She thought I was finally less needy. What she didn't know, what she'd never considered, was that her version of independence came with a cost, and I was almost ready to collect. The next week was all quiet preparation. Not panic, not haste, just measured movement in the shadows she never checked. I started with a lawyer, someone recommended discreetly by a colleague who'd walked his own tightrope a year prior. No loud phone calls, just a Tuesday lunch meeting under the guise of a work-related consultation. I brought a folder with timelines, account statements, screenshots, GPS logs. I didn't need to explain much. He glanced through the material and nodded once, slowly. "You're building this right," he said. "Careful, clean." We discussed legal protections, financial separation, housing strategy. I asked about timing. He advised patience, said to keep observing, keep collecting. Make the exit sharp, not messy. Let her feel the silence, he said. It's louder than shouting. I took it to heart. That night, I began moving valuables, not everything, just the things that mattered. Documents, heirlooms, a few family pieces my grandfather left me that she always said were clutter. I rented a small climate-controlled storage unit across town, paid in cash, registered under a separate P.O. box I'd opened months before under a side project LLC. She didn't notice. She was too busy managing her other life, or assuming I was too compliant to ever push back on hers. I withdrew half the funds from our joint account, the portion my attorney advised. It wasn't hidden, just rerouted into an individual account with no paper statements. Every move had to be legal, transparent to a judge, but invisible to her until it mattered. I also started writing down things I'd never intended to document, conversations, dates, offhand comments she made when she thought I wasn't paying attention. Not for blackmail, not for vengeance, just to remember. Because memory can be fragile when it's gaslit long enough. One evening, I told her I was going out for drinks with a colleague. Instead, I visited the storage unit and dropped off another box. Sat inside for 10 full minutes afterward with the door rolled down, just breathing in the silence. It felt more like home than my house did. Back at the house, she was curled on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She looked up as I came in and smiled. "You're late," she said, but there was no real interest in the question. "Lost track of time," I replied. And I had. In the best way. Each step I took made it easier to look her in the eye and feel nothing. Not rage. Not bitterness. Just distance. The same distance she claimed to want. She thought I was finally giving her what she needed. And in a way, I was. She just didn't know how permanent it would be. I picked Friday night. I told her I wanted to make dinner, just the two of us. No phones, no distractions. I even said I missed her, and I meant it in a way she didn't understand anymore. Not as longing, but as clarity. I missed who she used to be, who I used to be with her. But nostalgia doesn't erase facts. It just sharpens their edges. She raised an eyebrow when I suggested the night. "What's the occasion?" she asked, half suspicious, half curious. "No occasion," I said. "Just figured we haven't done something together in a while." She seemed surprised, pleased even. She texted less that day. Came home early. Wore that soft blue blouse I once told her made her look like summer. She caught me noticing and smiled like she thought she was still winning. I made her favorite, lemon garlic pasta, roasted vegetables, a bottle of that overpriced white wine she loved but rarely bought. The table was already set when she walked in. Candles lit. Music low. Just enough ambience to signal something different, intimate, intentional. "You really went all out," she said, walking in slowly, scanning the scene like it might disappear if she blinked too fast. "Thought it'd be nice," I replied, pouring the wine with a steady hand. I made sure to keep my eyes warm but unreadable. Calm, but not cold. That was key. We talked lightly at first, surface level. Work, her latest yoga class. She asked about one of my projects, and I told her just enough to seem engaged. She didn't notice how I didn't ask much back. She laughed once, genuinely, over a story I told from our first year together, and for a moment I saw it. The version of her who used to reach for my hand under the table, who used to tuck her hair behind her ear when she was listening hard. Then it was gone. We finished the meal. She leaned back, swirling the last of her wine. "Okay," she said with a smirk. "This was either incredibly sweet, or you're about to ask me for something huge." I smiled. Not wide. Just enough. "I do have something for you," I said. I stood, walked over to the side table, and returned with the envelope I'd sealed the night before. It was thick, organized, methodical. She laughed lightly, trying to read my expression. "What is it, a love letter?" I set it down gently in front of her. "Go ahead." She opened it, still smiling. Pulled out the first page. The smile vanished before the second. I said nothing. I just watched her face shift, from confusion, to recognition, to dread. Printed texts, screenshots, financial statements, hotel bookings, GPS logs, photos. And on top of it all, one handwritten note. 5 words, underlined once. "Too needy, right?" Her hand trembled slightly as she set the paper down. I didn't move, didn't speak. This wasn't the confrontation. That would come next. This was the reveal. And it landed exactly as I intended. She didn't touch the envelope again after opening it. Her fingers rested just beside the stack of printed texts and receipts, as if getting too close might burn her. She stared at the top page, the photo of her reflection in the hotel mirror, and didn't blink. I watched her carefully, not to provoke, but to register what was real and what was performative. Her voice finally broke the silence, barely above a whisper. "You've been collecting all of this?" I nodded once, slowly. "For a while now." She looked up at me then, eyes wide, disoriented. "Why didn't you say anything?" My hands stayed folded in my lap. "Because I knew you'd try to explain before I was ready to hear it. I needed the whole picture, not pieces." She picked up a page, scanned it quickly, then dropped it like it stung. "I can't believe you went through my phone." "You made it necessary," I said plainly. "You left me guessing for too long." Her posture shifted, her arms crossing, face tightening. "You had no right. You violated my—" I cut in before she could spin it. Don't make this about privacy. You staged an entire second life using the trust one gave you. I didn't violate anything. I uncovered it." She stepped back from the table, eyes darting across the floor like she could escape the room without walking. "You don't understand what it's been like for me." "Then help me understand," I said quietly, holding her gaze. Tell me which part of this was supposed to be self-care. The hotel reservations? The hidden purchases? The messages you labeled under a single letter? Her lips parted, but no words came. I stood slowly, folding the envelope and sliding it back toward her. You once told a table full of people that I was too needy, like wanting honesty was something embarrassing. I kept quiet because I didn't want to humiliate you in public. She blinked rapidly. I didn't mean it that way. I kept my tone flat. Then why did you laugh after you said it? Her mouth opened again, but the defense stalled somewhere in her throat. She wasn't crying, not yet, but her face looked like it didn't know which emotion to land on. She sank into the chair across from me, shoulders hunched. I messed up. I nodded again. You did. Her voice cracked. Can we talk about it? I let a pause stretch before answering. We just did. She looked up quickly, panic rising now. So that's it? You're walking away? I glanced toward the hallway where my packed bag waited. I already have. You just hadn't noticed yet. She rose halfway out of her chair, like she wasn't sure whether to reach for me or defend herself. You can't just leave. I met her eyes, steady and final. You wanted space. Now you have it. Fully. She reached out slightly, fingers twitching like they wanted to rewind the last 5 minutes. I didn't mean for it to go this far. You chose how far it went, I said, turning to the door. I'm just choosing when it stops. And I left her there, not for revenge, not to hurt her. Just because the moment demanded a clean end, not a slammed door, just a closed one. The house didn't feel like mine anymore. It was too quiet, too polished, too hollow in the way places become when the truth has already moved out. I walked to the front door without rushing. My bag was already in the trunk, packed the night before, staged in the garage, waiting for the right sentence to land. I hadn't forgotten anything important. Everything that mattered had been moved days ago. Behind me, I heard the scrape of the dining chair, then her uneven footsteps crossing the hardwood. Michael, wait, she said, her voice sharp with panic now. We can't end it like this. I turned, just enough to see her standing in the hallway, eyes wet, one hand outstretched but not reaching me. She looked smaller than usual, or maybe just cornered. Her confidence had collapsed into something rawer, not remorse, not yet, just desperation. We can talk, she said quickly. We can fix this. I didn't mean. You meant it, I said, quiet and sure. You meant every decision, every lie. Every time you looked me in the face and chose to say nothing. She stepped forward. I was confused. I didn't feel seen. I raised a hand. Stop. She froze. I let the silence hang between us for a long breath. Then I said, You told me no one belongs to anyone. That love is just space and growth and independence. That's what you said, remember? She nodded once, slowly. So I listened, I continued. And I gave you exactly what you said you wanted. She shook her head, tears falling now, streaking her mascara in soft, broken lines. I didn't think you'd actually leave. That's the problem, I said. You didn't think I had a line I wouldn't let you cross. Her voice cracked as she whispered. I still love you. I felt something then. Not anger. Not pain. Just a deep, exhausted clarity. Then you should have treated me like someone worth keeping. She took one step toward me, but I was already turning. I opened the door slowly. The late evening air was cool and still. No drama, no thunder. Just quiet, like the truth had finally finished speaking. I looked back at her one last time, not to hurt her, not to linger, but to remember. This is what distance really looks like, I said calmly. And you earned every inch of it. Then I walked out. No slammed door. No grand exit. Just a man reclaiming his dignity. And this time, she was the one left in the silence.